last thing that I would love to do is to, Anita, could you actually make me co-host? So that
Oh,
I can do
okay.
the Facebook live stream thing?
I don't know. I don't know. Should I?
Oh, well. The last thing that I want to do is invite everybody to a really special event. This is actually the wrap up of not only the day, but of the whole conference. If I can share my screen for a moment, then got, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Um, the every one of the really cool things about this conference is that as you're probably aware, the focus has been on. We decided to bring in and really focus on local activists rather than bringing in a really important national voice on these issues. For this round, we decided, why don't we just really showcase all of the incredible work that's being done by local activists so that students can find out what kind of organizations they can get involved with locally. And part of that has been that every evening we've ended each day with the screening of a locally produced documentary that's dealing with one or another of the social justice issues that we're dealing with in the conference, followed by a talk back with the directors, creators, makers, participants in that project. And tonight, we are extra specially treated to the premiere of a film. So this is a film called The Black Poets Project, The Beautiful Needful Thing. And this is a really interesting project that was spearheaded by a dear friend of mine, Jenny Gilrain. And her idea was, let me ask 9 local female artists what their favorite poem written by a Black American is, and then to do a reading of that poem and capture it on film and make a movie out of it. So Jenny, the person who thought of the idea, as well as the videographer, Aiden, and 4 of the poets are going to be joining us this evening for the premiere of their film, and then a follow-up conversation, and it'll be moderated by our much beloved Sharon Gavin Levy. So that will be the last event of the conference. And we invite you all to come to that, and I will stop sharing so that we can get into our panel discussion of climate justice with a focus on panels. Pipelines. Take it away, Anita.
Hi. Welcome to the environmental justice panel. Today we had climate justice earlier. And we have 3 wonderful speakers today who will be talking to us about environmental justice, looking at how it impacts different communities, looking at within that, of course, pipelines and natural gas extraction and plastic and all of the wonderful things that you probably never thought that you wanted to hear about. So we're going to start off with Karen Faradon, who will be first speaking. And normally I would introduce each person together and then, off we go. But I'm going to do it separately a little bit, simply because they each have such an incredible and amazing background that I kind of want to spotlight them, highlight them before they start giving us all the knowledge. And of course, our first speaker, Karen Faradon, is the founder of Berks Gas Truth, which is a grassroots community organization fighting to ban fracking and all shale gas infrastructure, and is on the steering committees of Americans Against Fracking, the Stop the Frack Attack Network, and co-founded the statewide coalition Pennsylvania Against Fracking and the Better Path Coalition. And I'll put in there that, by the way, our NCC Climate Action Network Club is a part of the Better Path Coalition as well. Karen has written and spoken frequently on fracking and related infrastructure issues, and she writes about the issues on the Huffington Post, Daily Kos, several blogs, and has op-eds in several papers and The Hill. She served as an editorial advisor on a book on fracking in Pennsylvania. She hosted television shows on climate, environmental sustainability. She helped organize the DNC's platform committee meeting with Bill McKibben and Josh Fox. So, you know, what hasn't she done? One of the things she also has done is organize the climate march in New York back in one of the organizers back in 2014. And of course, I know her from just all sorts of environmental action for many, many years. But we also trained together as climate reality leaders back in 2017 in Pittsburgh. So it's a climate reality sisterhood that I also have with the other two speakers as well. But with that, Karen, do you want to share us some information about environmental justice and pipelines and all of, you know, go take it away. You know how to do this.
Well, thank you so much. And what an intro. I really appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen and pull up. Let me go back. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, it's working great. So I actually called my presentation Transporting Shale Gas in Pennsylvania for the reason that even though I want to talk about pipelines, there's another project I want to tell you about that's happening that is related but not quite the same, and it's something that's happening in this part of the state. So I want you to be aware of that. But I'm going to start by doing a little bit of a survey of the state and what's going on elsewhere. And I'm going to start in Western Pennsylvania, and you see these little inset maps of some of the projects I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to kind of loop from the west up until northeastern Pennsylvania with that last project I want to tell you about. That's not a pipeline project, but it's an important one to have on your radar. And so the first one that I want to tell you about is the one in the west that is in Beaver County. You can see the corner of the thing there in Beaver County, and that is the Revolution Pipeline. There are a couple of reasons I want to tell you about this one. For one thing, is that it blew up in September of 2018, 1 week after going online. And so it was pretty dramatic. Speaking of justice issues for communities, the people there are still traumatized after 2 years. They've been getting very little support, but finally they're getting a little bit of headway with the companies, because what's happening right now is that that pipeline is going to be rebuilt, and it's going to be built a little bit closer to their community, and it's going to intersect another pipeline that's also just been approved. And so it's very unnerving for these people. They're trying to work with the company to get some sort of safeguards put into place. And one of the reasons why is because this is a pipeline that is considered to be a gathering line. So pipeline systems are generally made up of gathering lines, transmission lines, and then distribution lines. So gathering lines are the ones that take the gas right from the well pad, and they put it into some sort of processing facility before it's put into the long transmission lines that cross the state, cross several states sometimes. And that pipeline, that big transmission line, is the one that will then ultimately deliver it someplace, sometimes to something called the city gates, which is a maze of pipelines in increasingly smaller the diameters, so that those thin pipelines ultimately become what are called distribution lines or gas mains. So it goes through the city gates so that it can be ultimately distributed into the lines that will bring the gas to homes, businesses, institutions for heating, cooking, and that sort of thing. But the first segment of the pipeline system is gathering lines, and it's a big, big problem in Pennsylvania because they are virtually unregulated. And that's why this explosion was able to happen. If you look at the picture beneath the explosion, you can see it's kind of hard to make out, but you're looking at a steep slope. And companies that know how to build pipelines in Pennsylvania and hilly terrains like ours, although I will say there's not such a thing as a safe pipeline, but there are some that are better constructed than others. What those companies know to do is to never put a pipeline in a lateral fashion across the steep slope, but rather to go up and down. This pipeline was built across the steep slope, and so when the earth gave way, it snapped, it blew up. This is a big problem, as I've said, because gathering lines are unregulated, but there are companies that are worse than others. And so what some of our legislators are working on right now is fixing the problem of gathering lines in general. But another issue with it is the particular company behind this one that they're also paying special attention to in this state, because the company behind this is Energy Transfer. And if you're familiar with Energy Transfer at all, it's probably not because of this. This didn't get a lot of coverage in Pennsylvania, but actually the one that's most notorious for is the Dakota Access Pipeline. So if you're aware of Standing Rock and the Standing Rock Sioux and the battle that went on by the Standing Rock Sioux and their supporters to try to protect their sacred land and to protect their water, that's the same company that's behind this pipeline, the Revolution Pipeline, Energy Transfer. And Energy Transfer is notorious in Pennsylvania, not just for this explosion, but for another project, and that's the Mariner East Pipeline. And this is the one that spans the southern tier of Pennsylvania. It's also, again, Energy Transfer's project, although it started out being Sunoco Logistics, and then Sunoco Logistics was acquired by Energy Transfer, but it's all one big happy family now. And this is a project that started several years ago. As you can see, it spans the state. You can see that there are two lines on the map if you look closely. One of them is the red line, that's Mariner East 2, but Mariner East 1, the blue line, is one that was already in the ground. Mariner East 1 is over 80 years old. It's getting to be about 89 years old at this point. And what is generally considered to be the lifespan of a pipeline in the pipeline world is 50 years. And so once they get beyond 50 years, you know, they're more subject to deterioration, to erosion and that sort of thing. And so to put something back online, which is what they did when it's about 80 years old, and to reverse the flow, which is how they were able to do it. It used to carry gasoline from east to west. They reversed the flow so it could carry product from west to east. That's no trifling matter, and to do that in an 80-plus-year-old pipeline was tricky business in and of itself. And then what they had to do was to upgrade a lot of the infrastructure that was on the surface, like the valves and the pumping stations and that sort of thing. And in order to do that, the second thing that made them notorious in Pennsylvania, other than bringing this old pipeline back online, was the fact that they took all that land that they needed for those infrastructure upgrades by eminent domain. They tried to get people to sign leases and sign agreements, but some families wouldn't, and when they didn't, they took their land by eminent domain. And then in order to do that, they went to the Public Utility Commission and asked to be regulated, essentially. So a public utility corporation is one that will get permission from a state that it's working with, or government of some form that it's working with, to do some of the work. And so usually it would be in a contract basis, like if a company is hired to actually do the construction of the roundabout and to take care of the land acquisition matters related to that. That's how eminent domain is often used by a private company. It's been hired as a contractor to carry out the government's business. That's not the situation here. Eminent domain is being given to a company for its own private gain. And that is something that has not actually been settled in the law yet, and it keeps on happening. And so for Mariner East 1, as they were going around taking away the property of various people who lived in the path of some of the upgrades that they wanted to do, they announced that they were going to be doing Mariner East 2. And that's a whole nother round of eminent domain. So another reason to become notorious. And to make matters worse, the company already had a very bad reputation because of not just Dakota Access, but in Ohio, the Rover Pipeline was another one of their projects that had generated the most permit violations of any pipeline company in history. And now they're doing the same thing in Pennsylvania. It's the same kind of problems that they're having in the construction of Mariner East 2. They're called inadvertent returns mostly. It's drilling mud spills. But some of these things have been so severe that they have ruined private water supplies. They have damaged foundations of homes. Sinkholes have opened up. And that's what you're seeing on the right of this screen. What you're looking at is a sinkhole that opened up in Chester County, and that thing that goes through that hole is Mariner East 1. So this 80-year-old pipeline is being exposed to the elements because of a sinkhole that opened up because of the construction of Mariner East 2. And so one of the things that communities have to deal with is the piling on of all of these projects. That's one of the problems that people face, is that, you know, you don't get through one before the next one's being built. And they're trying to survive that, and they're trying to protect their homes, you know, and they're trying to protect their properties and their schools. If you look at this map, you see, again, a very long pipeline, but what's not as clear is that there are 40 schools, and there's another map that shows us 40 schools that sit along the pipeline in places where they are within the blast zone or the high consequence area for the pipeline. Some of these schools are just literally feet away from the pipeline. And should something go wrong, how would they get the kids out of there? How would they get the staff out? And it's not just schools, it's nursing homes and hospitals. You know, they're putting these things in populous areas where it's very, very difficult to move people in the event of an emergency. So for many, many reasons, the Mariner East Pipeline has become a very controversial one, and I didn't even know this until today, but if you look at the Philadelphia Inquirer today, there's part one of a very great story on Mariner East and what it has done to communities. So I highly recommend you go check out today's Philadelphia Inquirer. So this pipeline, I also wanted to bring this one up, not just because it's notoriety, but because this touches on another thing that's happening in Pennsylvania right now. This pipeline does not carry natural gas. This pipeline carries natural gas liquids, which is a different beast. It's ethane, propane, butane. It's not methane. And so what this really represents is a second generation fracking boom in Pennsylvania that's now going after those other products, particularly ethane, because ethane is used for the manufacturing of plastics. And so the industry driving all of this development is the petrochemical industry, not the natural gas industry. And that's a big, important shift going on in Pennsylvania, something we really need to be paying attention to, because it really has markedly changed the way things are working in this state right now. And the other thing that makes it especially worrisome is that if you look at where the Mariner East pipelines stop, they stop at Marcus Hook. Marcus Hook is an export terminal where the gas is shipped overseas. So what's been the story up until this point with the plastics boom in Pennsylvania, or the petrochemical boom, is that they've been exporting all the gas to Scotland and Norway, where they have these facilities that can crack open the ethane molecule. So they're called cracker plants. They can crack open the ethane molecule and extract the ethylene from within that's used to make plastics. Pennsylvania is starting to get its own cracker plants. Our state government gave Royal Dutch Shell $1.65 billion in subsidies to put a plant in Beaver County, not that far from where the Revolution pipeline blew up. They then did a study out of the Wolf administration working with something called Team Pennsylvania. They commissioned a study that found that Western Pennsylvania can support 4 more cracker plants. And so we're becoming a plastics world at the very time when we're not only trying to address climate change, but we're also trying to address plastics pollution. So we're taking a very bad turn in a wrong way. And I like to make that point because it gives cover to bad politicians, and we have plenty of them. We have plenty of climate deniers in Harrisburg, but we also have plenty of bad politicians who will talk a good game on climate, and they're really talking about fossil fuel emissions and how they're taking steps to reduce those, but they're not talking about the fact that at the same time, they are subsidizing this whole nother industry that relies on fracking, is responsible for emissions of its own, but it's not a fuel, it's a plastics project. And so they can get away with talking about fossil fuels and not even have to take into consideration what they're really supporting in the other half of their lives. And that is a whole new boom that's causing lots and lots of problems that have a tremendous impact on climate. So that's what's happening in Pennsylvania. But closer to home, there's an old school natural gas project, and this is the pipeline that is called Penn East. I'm sure if you're from this area, you've heard about it. Penn East Pipeline is one. I actually held the first organizing meeting against Penn East. I had to look it up recently for something. It was August 17th, 2014. That's how long we've been fighting that pipeline. Not one tree has been taken down to create the right of way. Not 1 inch of the pipeline has been built. That's because of that community that has fought like crazy on both sides of the river. It's a pipeline that would extend through 4 counties in Pennsylvania and then move over to 2 counties in New Jersey. And up and down the line, people have been working together for all those years to fight the pipeline. And so they've been successful thus far, and we know that they'll be successful ultimately. We're not going to stop until they are. But There's another sort of community impact that's important to consider when you think about what it has taken for these people to fight for 6+ years. And there's a psychological toll that is taken on people who have to make fighting a pipeline their second job. It's a second full-time job for a lot of these people. And so it's worth considering that, you know, even though it's not built yet and they'll be thrilled when they succeed at the end, right now it is taking a tremendous toll on them, and they need support and they need help. They need people in the community who haven't been jumping in to jump in and step up and help out to fight this pipeline, because it is exhausting. And then the piling on issue is another one, like I said, with Mariner East 1 and then 2, Adelphia Gateway. If you look at this map, you can see Adelphia is another one of these pipelines that's going to be refurbished. It's an 84-mile long pipeline that's going to go down to the Marcus Hook area and serve the Philadelphia region, even though there's no gas shortage. But they're bringing that back into service. It's owned by one of the Penn East partners, actually. And then that blue line on the same map is Penn East, and you can see how close they are, how close they run together. And if you look at the pinkish salmon colored line in between, that's Route 33. So we're talking about an area that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. If you see all those jogs in the Penn East pipeline, it's because it's going through that shopping center where there's Lowe's and Bed Bath & Beyond and all of that. It goes literally right through the shopping center. And it's so close to Adelphia Gateway. Yeah, if something were to go wrong, you know, they communicate with one another sometimes, and it could cause a real big disaster if two pipelines go wrong at the same time. And so I just wanted to kind of bring you up to date on that as well. But then the one I want to tell you about in my remaining time, and I hope I have a little remaining time, like one more minute, is the New Fortress Gibbstown LNG plant that's being proposed. So it's actually two different plants. New Fortress, it would be the one in Wyalusing, Pennsylvania, in Bradford County, where it would liquefy gas that would be fracked up in the northern tier counties, and then it would be moved not through a pipeline, but over the surface. And that's why I said transporting gas rather than just all pipeline projects is what we're talking about these days, because this one would move liquefied gas by truck and rail down to Gibbstown, New Jersey, passing through several environmental justice communities. It's literally surrounded by environmental justice communities. It's across the river from Chester, Pennsylvania, which is environmental justice community in its own right. And it would ship the gas overseas to Puerto Rico, well, not overseas to Ireland, but it would also ship it to Puerto Rico. And in both places, there are massive campaigns going on to try to stop this, because nobody wants this gas. And so right now, just as of today, I was just filing comments with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. These two companies involved with the Northern Project and the Southern Project independently went to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that should be in charge of regulating these kinds of LNG projects, to say that they wanted them to issue a declaratory order saying that they are not, that it's not in their jurisdiction, even though it clearly is if you read the Natural Gas Act. And so what you're seeing is a segmenting of the project. That's what they're attempting to do, to talk about it as two discrete projects. But when you do that, you forget about all those people in the middle, all those people in those areas where nothing needs to be constructed because it's just more trains and trucks. And so all of us who are on the path, and we're on the path here in Kutztown where I live, because one of the train routes goes west away from the turnpike area and the rail route to come to my county before it turns south and goes toward Philadelphia. So we're talking about potential routes. These are all proposed routes that are potential ones they won't tell us because they're national security secrets, but we can kind of figure out, talking to experts, what the routes would have to be. These are the potential routes. And so what we're asking people to do, and you'll see that on my next slide here, is to, if you want to get involved and you want to get involved in this specific project, you can go to your municipal government or your county government and ask them to pass a resolution. And I can provide you with all the information and talk you through it. I can even go to the meeting with you. But we want them to pass a resolution saying that they oppose this project. Because again, if the facilities aren't being built, there's nothing else being constructed. These communities don't even know that it's coming. And this is one way to at least inform them, but it's also one way of showing solidarity that we oppose it. We also have a petition, and I have links I'll put into the chat. You can get involved in PennEast. I can connect you with people who are fighting that in the Adelphia Gateway. And of course, we have our statewide coalition if you want to get involved with all the various things that we work on, which are many, many, many things. I'd be happy to tell you how to get involved with our coalition and work with you. And so here's my personal information here at the end. Like I said, I'll put it in the chat so you don't have to jot all this down quickly. But thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take your questions during the Q&A.
Before we let you go, can you go back to the map that you shared with us?
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, the first one? No.
Yeah, no, this one. No, yeah, that one. You know, from what I see is that it's kind of going right through Allentown, whatever we do. And, you know, like what can go wrong
So
in something like that?
that's the problem. I mean, all of these things are volatile. You know, gas is explosive. But when you liquefy it, you concentrate it. And so it becomes even more volatile. And the other thing is it becomes heavier. And that's one of the problems with the ethane gas as well. It's a wet gas. Wet gases or liquefied gases are heavier. So when they do leak, or you know, there's some kind of a problem like a derailment, let's say, anything that escapes can hug the ground and go up to a couple of miles. And so one of the links that I'm going to be sharing with you, and you can see that there are outlines, you know, surrounding the dark lines where the route is actually, you know, running. But those things that are on either side in blue or in gray on the other one are the areas that could be impacted. And so we call them high consequence areas. And I have an interactive map link that the Delaware Riverkeeper Network has made with Frac Tracker that does all these mapping projects. So you can actually type in your street address to see how close you are to all of this. And we already went to Lehigh County and they unanimously passed the resolution. We have several of them in the works right now. My borough did it. We have a few in the north now. But you know, we're trying to get to every possible municipality to show, again, solidarity. That's what we did with PennEast. If you look at the list of, or the map of all of the communities that passed resolutions against that pipeline, you see the route. I mean, every single community did one. And so you actually see the route of the pipeline made up by all the markers showing where they passed resolutions saying no. That's what we're trying to do here too. Now they could vote on this at any time, so we have to get on it. We can't really wait like we could with the pipeline that had just been proposed. This project, Delaware River Basin Commission, is the one that's going to hand out the permit that lets us all go forward or not. And that could happen tomorrow if they decide to call a meeting. So this is really pressing. We need everybody jumping in on this one right away if you possibly can.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, when you look at, and I know we talked about this before, and we'll probably talk about it in the Q&A, but, you know, when you're looking at pipeline approval process, this is really kind of getting away from all of that, using the railroads and using the highway system. It's just really incredible. So thank you. And, you know, if you have any questions, you know, keep popping them into the chat. But I want to get to our next panelist, and she's Maria Santiago, who is an educator and also a climate reality leader. So again, one of my climate reality sisters here. She is the founding president of the Atlantic Climate Justice Alliance. And she organized the 2017 and 2018 Climate March in New Jersey. She's also the lead organizer in the Global Awareness Project for Climate Justice and a contributing author to the Education and the Climate Crisis, chapter 24, in the anthology Climate Abandoned. So she's going to be talking to us a little bit about, again, environmental justice and how all of these things, I mean, Karen mentioned, you know, shipping it off to Puerto Rico are impacting different environments. And Maria, tell us about your experiences. You're muted. You're still muted.
I know, I realized something. I don't know which of the PowerPoints used. It's the one about climate justice or environmental justice. I have one for pipelines and I have one for Okay. My experience is as an activist. I began working on issues as an activist in the 1990s when I moved to the United States. But I was an advocate of education, world language programs, and bilingual programs. After 2013, I became an advocate of climate after I took the training of climate reality in Chicago. So my presentation, the one that I have now, I'm going to focus mostly in New Jersey because we left Diani with the topic of Puerto Rico. So I'm going to talk about the New Jersey Environmental Law X 232 and the two pipelines, the South Jersey pipeline and the Pilgrim pipelines that is coming from New York. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint, okay? Can everybody see my, so the first topic, the first thing I'm going to discuss is the New Jersey environmental justice law, and there are two critical, two main terms used in the law. One is the facilities, and when in the law is the word facilities refers to this kind of situations and buildings and circumstances in New Jersey. Anything that produces air pollution under the Clean Air Act, incinerators, sewage treatment, recycling facilities, and landfills and medical waste facilities. When in the law it refers to underburned communities, it is talking about the block in the census that identifies individual with low income, minority, or non-English speaking populations all together in groups. Let me, if I can. According to the U.S. Environmental EPA Protection Act, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people of color, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. I am going to explain the law, but I want to bring to your attention that most of these initiatives come from top to bottom. And we received the law, we received the policy, we received the policy, the ordinances, without the input of the people who received the burden. So the environmental justice law in New Jersey, what it's trying to do is to bring the bottom-up approach and have the input of the people, the individuals that are impacted by environmental injustices in the creation of changes and regulations. So the New Jersey environmental law is S232. It was signed in September 20 by Governor Phil Murphy. And it is about the initial permit applications and renewals for facilities located in communities overburned. So we're talking about Camden, we're talking about Newark, we're talking about even Jersey City, we're talking about communities Patterson, we're talking about communities where the air quality and the water quality is poor and is causing health impacts in the population. They're requiring for a facility submit a permit, they have to give to the New Jersey Environmental Department an environmental justice impact statement, which is the EJIS, where they have to disclose an evaluation of any health stressors that the facility can cause to that overburned community. the facility cannot exclude any existing health stressors before the permit already that the community has before the permit. And then when they submit the permit, it comes open to the public, and there are public hearings in the state. That's what the law is saying. But the public hearings is for people like me, people that live in the community, go to learn about the permit, about the consequences, about what's going to happen, what's going to be the impact, and decide if they're going to allow that facility to do what they're planning to do. So they receive oral and written comments from any interested parties and submit a transcript of the public hearing to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. It says that the department there's a fee. The applicants have to pay a fee to support the expanded environmental justice review, and they have to provide advisory resources to the overburdened communities during the public hearing. This area is a little bit, I don't know, when I read it in the law, I wasn't clear if who's providing the advisory resources to the overburdened communities, if it's the New Jersey New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, or these corporations are asking for permits to build in those overburdened communities. So what happens after the hearing and the assessments? Okay, once the permit applicants submit the stressors, the health impacts, the hearing transcript to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, there's a decision-making process. And they can either deny the permit or accept it. And then they put a clause in the law that says, unless it serves a compelling public interest in the community where it is to be located. So that has to be evidence, and that has to be shown. And there's no provision in the law yet that describe the regulations or the procedure to evidence that. Then the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has 120 days, we're talking about 6 months, from the law effective date to publish a list of overburdened communities. So that list is not there yet on the website of New Jersey, but it's supposed to be there already by February. So before February, they should have the list according to the law. At the same time, Governor Murphy signed this law, there were other politicians in the state working in other areas. So we see that Senator Cory Booker introduced the environmental justice legislation in the Senate. And the Attorney General in New Jersey announced 12 new environmental justice enforcement actions targeting the contamination in, again, overburdened communities, low-income neighborhoods. So what is the impact of this law? We can't determine yet, but the law tells the New Jersey Environmental Department that they have to implement the regulations, rules, and indicators for the application of the law. So that needs funding. So this means that they have to find the experts that they have to pay, and they have to create sub-agencies to create those regulations, to craft them. But again, my point here is with a top-down approach, we are going to overlook the needs of the overburdened communities. We need, again, in this process, the voice of the people that live in those overburdened communities, the rules, and what are the indicators for the application of the law. So we have a law, but we don't have the agency, we don't have the individuals, we don't have the funding, we don't have the process, we don't have the assessments. This is a work in progress. And then as a positive thing, the these corporations that are trying to continue building in these communities will have to modify their practices in order to continue their businesses. So I put this slide because next week, and I'm bringing this for all the attendees in this panel. There's an environmental justice explanation. There's going to be a forum, a panel explaining the law with the advocates of this law, who were there were three main groups: Clean Water Action, the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, and the Ironbound Community of New Jersey. So, and I registered myself, but this is not only open to New Jersey, it's open to all states, because when you go register, it asks you your zip code and what state you live in. So if any of you is interested in learning about the process, how they did it, and the impact of the law, I'm welcoming all of you to join us, to join New Jersey next week. Now I'm going to talk the pipelines in New Jersey. I just brought two examples. The first one that I'm going to talk is the South Jersey proposed pipeline. Is a gas pipeline that is proposed to take 22 mile gas through the pipelines, and will cut through Cumberland, Atlantic, and Cape May counties, and those areas have a nature and an environment that is going to be affected by the pipeline. Accidents, well, I'm sorry. Any accidents or during the pipeline, and I think Karen mentioned that before, will be detrimental for the residents and the flora and the biodiversity of the community. And here I have a picture of, this is the proposed gas pipeline route. I think I move it, and which is the purple one. It goes from Morris County, and it's not as detailed, the map that I found that Karen had. And the next pipeline I'm going to talk, and this one I'm more familiar because I used to live in a town next to Linden, which is Clark, and I attended a couple of protests against it. Because in Linden is where one of these pipelines is going to pass to it, Albany and Linden. So there are two parallel lines, 170 miles each. Back-end shale oil will be sent north, and refined products and kerosene will be sent north. And I put back-end shale oil because when we did this protest, they always remember an accident that happened in Canada. With back-end shale oil, an explosion where 33 individuals died. It will cross 5 New Jersey counties, 6 New York counties, and 30 towns in New Jersey, and 25 New Jersey municipalities. What Food and Water Watch was doing at that time, we were trying, when I was part of that, they were encouraging us to go to different city council meetings and town hall meetings, and request ordinances or resolution to oppose the pipeline. And if you go to the web, they have a website. There are many towns in New Jersey already that have a resolution against the pipeline, and one of them was Clark. Yeah, Clark had made a resolution. And what is interesting is they were building, the point was, if every town has this resolution, it will be much easier for, at the legislative level, to make a law or a policy to hold or to deny the permit, because now everybody is in agreement So this is like a bottom-up approach instead of a top-down approach. Baking shale oil is highly volatile and involved in many accidents, like the one I mentioned in Canada. And we have a protest in Ramapo because that pipeline is going, if there are leaks, is going to cross and alter the water of there's a river, and it's gonna alter the quality of the water. And the water supply of home, businesses, and schools. Shale oil fracking is harmful and contributes to climate change. Then here I have, what can you do? Contact your elected officials, ask them to create a resolution to oppose the pipelines in your local community. Write letters to the editors, right? Donate to grassroots organizations like the one Karen has, the one that Diane is going to talk. That is my organization too, the Atlantic Climate Alliance, because all this, we need funding for copies, for transportation, if we have volunteers, for gas, for the grassroots. Sign petitions against pipelines, and very important, organize and attend municipal and city council meetings. And as I was looking in my phone, I found that the Pilgrim Pipeline submitted used an occupancy permit application in New York in October. So they're still, they haven't changed their plan. In October 1st, 2020. And in their website, they say they are in compliance, because that's what they want to put, in compliance with the regulations and with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. So we have to see what's going to happen after, when they submit in New Jersey, because they did that already in New York. Another issue that I work in the environmental justice is the issue of Puerto Rico, that I'm not going to give many details because that's the speech of Diane, but it's very close to my heart because first I'm Puerto Rican, I have family in Puerto Rico. I moved to the States 22 years ago, but I still have a very strong connection, of course, to the island. And there are many, and the island, the situation of the island is being impacted also by environmental injustice, racism, and climate change. So I want to ask if anybody has any questions for me.
I keep realizing I mute myself and then I start talking. One of the things that I saw common between what you said, Maria, and what Karen said was, your finish of contact your elected officials, go to council meetings, make sure that, there's resolutions passed. So definitely I urge everybody to do that. Because that is so very important. That is one thing that you can do, make your virtual source. And you know what? Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but at least you can put what you're thinking on record. But there are times that you can make a difference, and they will shift, they adjust, and we do see that. So community action is so important because it is a major environmental impact. And of course, the communities that often are selected to be homes to these pipelines are often communities that don't really have a voice, that can't really push against these companies. So that's another, that's where really this becomes an environmental justice issue.
And like I told you before, when they try to make policy reforms, it's always top-down approach. Where are the voices of the people that are being impacted? It has to be a bottom-up approach, and we need to start not to start, we need to continue and really develop that framework, that approach.
Absolutely, I agree. And I don't know, Karen, since you guys have a similar approach, I guess, to solutions, do you have any thoughts to some of the things that Maria was saying before we? I know we can get. You know what? If you guys have like 10 hours, we'll still be here talking about this, right? But you know what? Before we get to comments, let's continue on with our next presenter, because I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to hear all three of these wonderful activists. So Deanna is the executive director and trustee of the Atlantic Climate Justice Alliance with 28 years of experience in the environmental industry. And of course, she has many, many awards documenting her successful journey. She has an extensive work history within that. I'll just mention a couple of them that she has consulted with and for elected officials, both in Puerto Rico and in the U.S. She has worked as an environmental consultant, for instance, to the Department of Housing Office. And I could go on and on and on. What I want to get her on here so she can talk instead of me talking. And so she can talk and share some of the information that she has, some of her perspectives. And of course, as I've been saying with all of you wonderful ladies, another climate reality leader. Maybe you guys should all join the climate reality leadership, right? So, Deanna, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Little detail. So, my name is Deanna Rios. I live here in New York, but I work in Puerto Rico. I'm still working in Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority Transformation Plan. The Puerto Rico Power Authority has a transformation plan that is to be issued any of these days. They're supposed to start, they're supposed to fix the power lanes, the power structure of Puerto Rico. But what they're gonna do is they're just going to take the same old post, electric post, and they want to fix that instead of coming with a new clean energy plan. So that's why we call the PREPA transformation plan, because we need to transform that plan. Let me see how I share this. For start doing I took this as an example, because if you want to make a campaign, you need a plan of action. If you do this plan of action, you, of course, you look for the title. If you see this photo over here, this picture here, it was very, very, very disturbing to me, because if you see it in a satellite from far away from the space, Puerto Rico is not even there. You cannot see the electricity in Puerto Rico for 2 days in a row. It was blank. So when we are here in the diaspora, see that kind of thing, it hurts very much, because we don't know what was happening. Well, we have an idea, but we didn't know what happening. So that day really marked a day on me. And I said that this day should come where they're supposed to fix this with solar panels. That's what we want, solar panels. The pace of action. First, you take an objective. Our objective is to comply with the Paris Agreement guidelines, that is the reduction of 2 degrees Celsius in the temperature of the planet. You make operational guidance. You check well-designed domestic policies that are supported by international corporations like the UN. The UN has the Paris Agreement. It was signed, so we need to keep these domestic policies to be supported by international groups. Then you have the policy reform. What policy you want to change? In this case, we want to change the Puerto Rico Energy Power Authority Transformation Plan. What do you need? You need also domestic mobilization. You have to go do presentation, give education, do rallies, grassroots organization, try to join them together with a common theme and a common plan of action and working plan. When you design policy, you take upstream regulations that are already. Maybe there's some regulations that need a little bit of change, or there's regulations that are maybe already not being used, not being enforced. So you can take all those regulations and you try to design a policy design that goes upstream with the regulations that you already have or you want to change. Reporting. If we do everything, but we don't report, it's like not doing anything. So in science, you need to report. And for what we do for that report, we do look for independent party verification. That's very helpful, because when you look for independent party verification, you're not putting, it's being objective. Enforce the strategies, the formula of strategy. You have those policies. How are you going to enforce your strategy? You use your data to process a locus, a place, a site. In this case, I started with Culebra, Puerto Rico. That is another island in Puerto Rico. It's 13 miles northeast. You have to take a ferry or a plane. And I took that as a locus because Culebra doesn't have own electricity, doesn't have own water, so they're resilient, and they are willing to join us in all these procedures, so they can be resilient and don't need the main island for power or water. Implementation. Your initial pilot reporting gathering periods. You should report by periods before complying with implementing a full-scale policy, because the initial pilot report in this gathering will tell you where to go, where to find the ways to try to then implement in full scale the policy. You should try also to first by municipal legislation, maybe state, and then the whole nation. Another thing that we have is pricing the pollution. So you have to have something besides the proposal that you have to make them like your proposal, because if not, we're going to price the pollution. You can price emission taxes, you can price emission trading system, fuel import taxes, and others. So sometimes they see this like, oh, I better comply with the policy, because if not, we have to be pricing the pollution and they have to pay taxes. The priorities of action is expand coverage. First, I start with the locus Culebra, and then I will go to span the whole island. Then whatever is left, like maybe the U.S. island, Virgin Islands, develop new initiatives. When these things are happening and you bring expanding coverage, you will see that your organization, your plan, we have to develop new initiatives to continue their path. Don't get stuck in old things. Always open your minds to new initiatives. And there's a good news because it's a win-win-win situation. And we all here already started. So I think give yourself an applause. And this is for me. I finished. If somebody has any question, this is how you put the plan into action. How you make this your own. Everybody has their own little book. You have to own it to express it and work it in the way that you feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, and absolutely, I agree that you have to have a plan, right? You have to have a plan, and and yeah, absolutely, we're already on the way because they're here, they're listening to all this information. So, you know, I want to ask if anybody has any questions for some of our panelists, and of course, you know, if you have any thoughts. I mean, I'm sure that at least living in the Lehigh Valley, you have heard of PennEast because you constantly hear about that. There are people who have signs up on their lawns. Have you guys heard of PennEast pipeline in our area? Some of you have. I see Jim is nodding. Definitely. Did you want to say something, Jim, or you're muted?
Well, you know, I'm in Central Jersey, so we hear about it, the pipelines situations in Jersey all the time, going through the Pinelands and all that stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then one of the students here is saying that she hasn't heard of the pipelines. Karen, I know that's when I first met you at some of the PennEast protests. So you want to maybe expand a little bit? I know you touched on it already in your presentation. You want to expand a little bit because that's one that is very much affecting us.
Yeah, I mean, that one has been such a complicated set of twists and turns, but what they've tried to do over the years is to find a way to get the thing built despite the pushback that they're getting at various times from various different places and governments. So for instance, the state of Pennsylvania has the absolute worst Department of Environmental Protection on the planet. New Jersey has a much better one, and people have problems with that one too, but it's so much better than Pennsylvania's. And so there are only a couple of permits that companies need to receive in order to be able to complete a pipeline to get FERC approval, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approval. And those are 401 permits. That's the big one. It's a set of federal permits and a set of state permits, but they're all about water quality. And the big one, like I said, the 401 permit. And Pennsylvania gives it out prematurely. So they already have it. They don't need it. But New Jersey said no. They got the application and they looked at it and they said, we don't have enough information to give you this permit. So we're shutting down your application. We're not even going to open the file. And so that was a big help. But the other thing that happened was, as I mentioned, that eminent domain issue. They wanted to take New Jersey land by eminent domain because what was happening was there was a lot of resistance to surveying property, and they have to be able to do surveys in order to get their approval, and people were saying no to the surveys. We actually gave people a deny rescind letter, even if they had already given permission to do a survey. We told them they can send in this letter to rescind that permission, and that way the company can't come onto their property. And then after enough years of this, when they were getting frustrated enough, they wanted to start eminent domain proceedings to to be able to come onto property to survey it. And that's part of the environmental review. But they wanted to do that on state land in New Jersey, and New Jersey said no. And so they went to court over it. And so with these big problems facing the companies on the Jersey side of the pipeline, they decided the grand solution to all of this is to build the Pennsylvania side. And that's the one that goes through 4 counties. So it's the big part of the pipeline. And they want to just build the Pennsylvania segment of the pipeline. And then maybe New Jersey will come around to its senses, or they'll figure out what they want to do at that point. And so that's the fight right now, is to disallow that from happening, to stop that from happening, but to get Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to not allow it to be segmented in that way. And so it goes on and on and on. Like I said, constant twists and turns from different things that come up, different roadblocks that we've been able to throw in their way. It's just, at some point, it's a war of attrition. And so, we're waiting to see who can take it the longest, but it's going to be us. And we're going to be the ones who prevail, because we'll just hang in there and they'll spend billions trying to build this thing, but we'll prevail and they'll walk away. That's what we're working on.
So what do you guys think about when people tell you, yes, but we need the pipelines because they provide us with energy, or they provide us with stuff to make plastic, or they provide us with, freedom from oil or all that, or hey, it's a alternate fuel, or all of that. How do you guys answer that? Anyone can chime in. Maria?
Well, that's a question that we redirected to clean energy. There are other sources of energy, wind, water, and also it's going to take time, but the transition in between from what we have now, the job skills that the people that were building those pipelines need to transfer, or they did acquire new skills or updated skills to build, to work in the green renewable environment. And they're already getting jobs. For example, they're building those for the wind power. So if they're not building pipelines, they're going to build something else. I'm thinking about welders, who are the ones who the pipe fitters, that's the name, union. Yeah, those are the ones who fear most for their job security, and not mostly about the source of energy, but mostly about their ability to bring food to their table. So, and when they come with those questions, when they come with that concern of how I'm going to live, how I'm going to make a living for my family, okay, but then those corporations have the moral responsibility to help them transition into what's coming now.
Yeah, because that's often what you'll hear when politicians are saying, no, we'll approve it because it's going to bring jobs. But, it's a temporary. I mean, you're not going to be continuing to building that same pipeline year after year after year. And with fracking, too, it's just a temporary thing. Karen.
Can I just a quick, this is such an illustration. When PennEast was first being proposed and they were putting out all these various reports on how many jobs it was going to create. And I think on their website, they've flipped back and forth about the language that they use. First they say create, then they say support. Now they're back to create, I think. But anyhow, they said the number's 12,000 jobs. And that's nowhere close to being true. And so I was working with a reporter in New Jersey at one point when their report on jobs creation came out. And he called me, he said, I just called the spokeswoman for PennEast, and I said, the taco truck driver who pulls up in front of the job site at lunchtime, is that one of those jobs created that you're talking about? And she said, yes, that would be in the food service category. And so it tells you a lot. It tells you that the vast majority of those jobs really aren't permanent jobs. They're not even construction jobs always. They'll count anything ancillary that they can count as one of those jobs. And if you ever looked at that report that they put out with the 12,000 jobs, but really drilled down, no pun intended, you would find that there were going to be 21 permanent jobs when it was all done. 21 as opposed to 12,000. So, it's a joke, and it's one that, elected officials get away with telling over and over and over again. Jobs, jobs, jobs. And that's the biggest obstacle I've ever encountered in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I asked the question, because you often hear, that jobs, you hear about, but energy independence and all of that. Now, we do have a question in the chat that says, I wonder how much politics on the island affects whether they will push solar, thinking about Puerto Rico. You're muted, Dan.
How much one?
Politics. So how much role does politics play in whether solar would be made more available or more the norm?
The grassroots organization, they have a proposal. It's called Queremos Sol. We want sun. Everybody in Puerto Rico really wants the sun and the windmills, but this is politics right now. The UTIER, the Union of the Workers, they are opposed to this transformation. The workers of the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, they're opposed because they have a contract with Luma Energy, and Luma Energy is going to have the monopoly of all the workers there. So all the people who works in the Puerto Rico Energy Power Authority, they have to go to work with this Luma. And Luma is training people. Instead of training for work in clean energy, they're training people for doing the jobs that the Puerto Rico Electric Authority has done. So right now they are in, they have a political debate, environmental debate, and that was one of the questions. They have rallies. They has put a stop in the court so they can stop this contract to be signed. It's a lot of things going forward, but yes, Puerto Rico wants Queremos Sol.
Yes, and I know that after Hurricane Maria, there was a lot of hope that when it was a rebuild, that they would rebuild with green infrastructure. But unfortunately, that's not that was not really the case. But that would have been a perfect opportunity to shift. They had. I mean, I know Puerto Rico had a very aging infrastructure, so it would have been perfect to bring that in. Now we have one more question in the chat, or not even question. Instead, a student is saying that the government should maybe subsidize training, green energy industry, solar industry, the wind industry, instead of subsidizing the oil companies. So absolutely, that is so very important, and perhaps that's the perfect transition to ask you guys, as we're now finishing up, and this is really the last panel with panelists, because after this at 5 o'clock we have a big overview wrap up of the entire conference. But I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think the NCC community, including the students, the faculty, the administration, can do to support some of the issues that we talked about today? So whether it's the pipelines, or whether it's shifting to, alternate energy, or job creation, all of that, what do you think we can do? What can we do to, instead of just saying, okay, great, thank you for being here, goodbye, but what can we do? What can be our takeaway?
Well, I would propose that you can do a partnership with us. You can do a partnership with us, and we can start to do some work.
Yeah,
or any grassroots organizations.
Yeah, any grassroots organization, or, we have Karen from Berks Gas Truth, or you guys from Atlantic Climate Justice Alliance. Definitely, these are things that, for instance, I will be telling my students, like, hey, there are so many things that you can do. You need to get involved, definitely. What about you, Karen? What do you think?
First of all, you do a lot there, so you deserve a lot of credit for everything you've already done at NCC, and you deserve a round of applause for that, actually.
Thank you, Karen.
But I mean, I've always been impressed coming to your school and working with your students. They're amazing, and so I don't want to discount what they've done, but I would ask that you know, one of the things we have a struggle with is telling the story of Pennsylvania. As you saw, it's a big story and there's so many moving parts to it. And there are parts of the story that aren't really understood in this part of the state. And so, you know, obviously getting involved in the local issues and helping out with some of these things, you know, getting involved in the pennies fight. I saw somebody asked about that. Right now, one of our areas of focus is the Delaware River Basin Commission, because they actually could have authority over that specific pipeline. They could say no to it. They could shut it down tomorrow if they wanted to. So, you know, help us pressure, you know, those kind of entities over the local fights, but help us tell the story of Pennsylvania. And so all these kinds of wonderful things that you do, these conferences and these online things while we're all dealing with COVID and Zoom world, you know, that's something that, you know, we could really use help with from, you know, the community there. If you wanted to have more, you know, webinars or things like that, that's an immediate thing where we could use help with.
Yes,
Getting the word out.
Get that word out. And it's easy to just look away, go, oh, I'm busy, I can't deal with this right now, but we need to deal with this. And finally, Maria, what do you think?
I'm going to reiterate what I said before: letters to the editor, donations to grassroots organizations, joining the causes that are close to your heart. You have to make the connection between heart and mind, and it has to be meaningful for you to be impactful. Even if there's so many causes, just start with one. Just start with one.
Can I say one other thing real quick? And that is that, you know, and I've said this before, I always tell people to go after the thing that they're already interested in, because there's a way in. You know, climate change is everything. And so, you know, if it's, you know, sustainable agriculture, or if it's biking, you know, getting bike lanes in your town, whatever
Or
it is.
electric vehicles, you know,
Yeah.
what cause is what is driving you? Just one cause.
But at the same time, I'm changing my language a little bit. I think you should do that. But everybody's going to need to get a little uncomfortable now. Everybody's going to have to move a little bit outside of their comfort zone, I think, because we're really down to the wire.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we have, at least I can tell you that the NCC's Climate Action Network is probably in, because our president just put in the chat, I'm in. So that's Rachel here. So we'll definitely be, you know, reaching out to each of your organizations. But yes, go out there and be uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. You need to, because what's the alternative here? And I wanted to say thank you to Maria, Diani, and Karen for being here, giving us all this incredible information, and of course, leaving us with what we can do, which is be uncomfortable, go out there, find at least one of these organizations or issues that you're passionate about, call your legislators, go to council meetings, you know, be out there, sign petitions, and of course, donate to some of these organizations as well. So thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to everyone else who was here. And it is amazing. We have just wrapped up basically the Peace Conference, but at 5 o'clock, we will have an overview, including our the school's president, President Erickson, will be there to hear what is our takeaway. So if you guys have time and interested, please join us in a couple of minutes, in 5 minutes, at our final wrap up. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
Bye.
see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you.
This was awesome.
Hey.
Awesome.
It was so great to hear Maria and Diana. That was great. And so,
Karen, hats off to you always.
no. But thank you. I really appreciate it. This was amazing what you pulled together, and you've been doing this for 3 days. So,
Well, today was the hard one. Today was the hard one. And this is Rachel over here, right? Well, for me, she's right over here under me. Oh, here she is. Yes.
Hi, Rachel. Well, I'll let you go to the bathroom now.
Yeah, she's the one. She's the new president since Ashley graduated. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And a special pleasure.
Ashley's had big shoes to fill, but Rachel is filling them and more. So
Wow.
I always get so lucky with these kids, or you know, women. But anyway,
Well, you do, but it's you too. You are such an inspiration. Honestly.
and Karen, I don't know if I told you, Rachel is also a trained climate reality leader.
Oh my God. We
Yeah.
really do have to
Yeah.
actually like have a club for real. Like, you know, I'm
Yeah.
wearing my thing. I don't know if you saw me.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah, she just trained this summer at the global training. I think at the first
Yep.
global training, right?
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, so I
Very
had a couple
cool.
of students in there, so it was really great. But
Okay.
Yep.
yeah, well, thank you again, Karen. It was awesome. Go do your thing. I'm gonna probably go do my thing before the 5 o'clock meeting.
Yeah. Heading over to the last
But
one.
at least then I don't have to be on. I can kind of relax a little bit and listen.
Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
'cause I feel like I need to get on the treadmill. Sitting all day, it's like I can feel my legs are so tight.
Oh, I know. It's
Yeah.
terrible. I know. I know.
I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.